Hi, Namaskara, Nanu Monica.
Hi, I'm Aishwarya.
We are Conscious Bangalore, and we are hosting a series of dialogues with practicing conscious designers like Meredith and Miriam from Denver in the pursuit of continuity and inclusion within the conscious design community. Welcome, Miriam and Meredith. It's really lovely to have you here with us today.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So let's start this interview with trying to understand your journey, the what, the why, and how you came to be a CCD fellow. What specific aspects of your lived experience, education, and your professional work led you to start Conscious Denver?
I'll take a stab at that one. So I joined this science-informed design movement early on, almost 2 decades ago now, when studies from neuroscience were just starting to emerge, making a strong case how our environments impact our brains and our bodies. Miriam and I met when I was faculty teaching a course on human factors in design. She was a graduate student and she took my neuroscience and architecture course. And since that time, we've looked for opportunities to kind of keep being able to work together. So forming a Conscious Denver chapter seemed like a great way for us to finally be able to work together and to feed our passions and to effect change. So I now work as director of research for a healthcare architecture firm. And under that parent design company, we have a science-informed design group that brings together entities like human factors and process improvement and sustainability. And often those are experts who are siloed out on projects, but having kind of integrated us all as a unified team, we're better able to evaluate projects as more holistically as kind of an ecosystem. So, so last year's Conscious Cities Festival theme, which was Shape and Be Shaped, kind of brought us to think about how we would shaping health, kind of how do we shape health and how are we shaping health in Denver? And we really wanted to expand the conversation around health and design because often we have kind of a limited definition of health, thinking about it as genetics and biology and maybe access to healthcare or medical services, but those things actually don't account for the majority of our health status, which is determined also by social circumstances and behaviors, and of course our environment. So we wanted to showcase how Denver was shaping health, and we brought together 6 experts speaking on a really diverse range of aspects of health. So homelessness and transportation and universal design, and how do we measure health in design, and how do we design for beauty because it's good for our health. So bringing together that diverse group under the common umbrella of health highlighted some of the cool things that were happening in Denver, but also gave us an opportunity to kind of situate to expand our definition of health and kind of situate it in this larger ecosystem.
Yeah,
so that's my very long journey.
No, that's really fascinating in the sense that your background is definitely what science-informed design has sort of evolved into. And the fact that Miriam and you got together and started a chapter and then also sort of led these ideas into from practice into community building. That's exactly what the movement is all about. And that brings me to the next question, which is, what is conscious design to you? As a practitioner of science-informed design, as well as someone who's actively mobilizing communities' aspirations towards this?
So I can take that one too. I think that to me, it's first and foremost kind of an ethical process for creating environments which are aware and responsive to people, to inhabitants. And I think the other thing that really resonates with me is the science-informed design approach or methodology, because we can base design decisions that are grounded in data and evidence and the sciences to help inform decision making and really be able to support people.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, and do you see that there is this gap between what community wants and perceives as something that reflects what their aspirations could be versus what science actually ends up publishing as a community? I mean, both of them are communities, right? But in your experience, have you encountered a certain skepticism towards science and evidence in the design community?
Yes, I think it's a lot to do with a lack of just awareness. It's not how designers were traditionally trained. So I think that, in terms of the technical aspects, we can do science-informed design. Like we can measure human environment interactions. We can do all those things, but um, the value we need the community to be wanting to see the value, right? And if we don't have both of those, we won't get to the tipping point. So I think in my role, I work a lot on just sort of the value case for projects and trying to help bring awareness to designers, to clients, to the greater community, so that we can get to that tipping point.
Thank you. I have a question. Have there ever been any challenges with communicating ideas to different, people from different silos or even stakeholders or even the community itself? Have you faced challenges? How have you dealt with these challenges, if there have been?
Miriam, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I think better if you take that one.
Okay. Sure. I mean, definitely we've had, and you're just talking about kind of philosophical challenges. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a great workshop that that I like to do every year on evidence-based design and healthcare design, which brings together kind of some of the leading experts in design research. And we always start with kind of, what are your roadblocks to evidence-based design in this case? And there's all kinds of challenges as far as budget and just even that science, it often embraces a very linear approach, being hypothesis driven, and so you're changing sort of one variable at a time. And in our environment, it's I mean, we're as people, we're dynamic, but our environments are dynamic too. So things are always changing, and there's many variables. So the scientific method, it's tough for kind of what we do. And so we're looking at new ways of like big data approaches and things like that. But I don't know, when it's a value, like we were talking about before, when it comes down to like a value case and not being able to kind of get it across, and you keep trying and it's the right thing to do, then I always resort to just hide the vegetables. Just tell them what they want to hear and hide the vegetables and get it through.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Yeah. I have a question for Miriam. Can you tell us what your journey has been as a designer and in the community, in the conscious design community?
Sure. So as Meredith mentioned, I took her class, Design with the Brain in Mind, at the University of Colorado. And it was both the culmination and the beginning of a long journey combining neuroscience and architecture. And it was really this journey to try and understand what I knew to be true, but didn't have the vocabulary to understand and to discuss it. And that sort of core belief was that the built environment profoundly impacts the human experience. And so my engagement in architecture has always been driven by this belief that the human brain and body are inextricably linked to the environment. And that relationship impacts everything from well-being, health, and behavior. And so that's kind of how I came to the connection between neuroscience and architecture. But also it was, I really appreciate something that I've always appreciated is collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration. And so it was this bringing together of both the arts and science and humanity and architecture, and really trying to create spaces that are more human focused than what I had experienced in school. There was a lot of focus on form and just very traditional architecture school stuff. And this was the first time where it felt like we were bringing people into the equation. And so that's sort of where I've come to this community from. And then I so enjoy the conversations that I've been a part of with various fellows in the community, and just continue to look for opportunities to engage and collaborate in this interdisciplinary way.
Yeah, of course. And I definitely enjoyed the time that we worked together, and I think we worked on awe as a phenomena. And yeah, of course. And collaborating with you was definitely enjoyable. Well, yeah, taking this conversation forward into the festival this year, right? The theme is the person-space continuum. What comes to your mind when you think of the person-space continuum in Denver? And also, if I understand correctly, Miriam recently moved to Israel as well. So is there a difference? Like when you quickly, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind? These two cities and person-space continuum.
It's early days. It's probably hard for me to summarize, but it is something I've been thinking about place and place attachment through the lens of everything that I've learned over time and studied. And it's a fascinating lens to approach the world, and definitely noticing differences in transportation, in mobility, and access to resources in cities, traffic patterns. There's so many differences, but
one of the things Miriam and I were talking about after she moved is the kind of the role of place as like a main character in our lives, and having relocated your entire family, like there's kind of a family member missing. Denver is no longer there. Like there's a real void, and you shared that your children miss Denver, and so I think a lot about that in terms of place. And then I also think that leads me to think about kind of the years that we spent in the pandemic now, because I think there's kind of we're in this critical moment where there's been a great disruptor to person-space continuum. I mean, there's a huge disruptor in any evolutionary continuum going on right now, right? So we have this blip in our routines and our patterns, for most of us resulting kind of from the pandemic. And in the US, the last year was the blip was caused also by racial and economic and health and built environment crises, and some of those just kind of happened in parallel, and some were downstream effects of the pandemic. But Denver, like many other cities, experienced extreme impacts to how we're interacting with our environments and with our communities, and with one another. So I think we're still very much in the middle of this historical blip. We're still very much in transition, even though there's this collective desire to move past what will probably be remembered as a pretty dark period. I think there's also value in cultivating an awareness of our present, to be able to kind of define the vision for the future city. How do we understand our current state and kind of what we've moved away from, or what things are different, and not just regarded as temporary or transitory. Miriam has written a lot about liminal spaces, which are transition spaces in along a journey or in a building. But I think it really applies here that we're in this space in time of transition, and kind of embracing the liminal space instead of just kind of we'll move past it, can really help offer us important lessons when we think about designing a future city. So the issues that we're facing, I think, are so novel and ginormous that there's an opportunity to innovate and to try things that we've never tried before and wouldn't have tried before because it would have been too risky. So we can disrupt the system in ways, instead of just kind of relying on traditional methods of designing. And so for me, conscious design seems the right approach for this. And with Conscious Denver, those are the kinds of things we're interested in exploring.
Thank you so much. I think we're all facing that in every city. I want to ask you what your aspirations for future events and dialogues are, and also what you hope to share with other CCD fellows and other city chapters, and what you hope to learn from them in the future.
I'll take that. I believe that this has come up in the community, but I think climate change is really this shared increasing challenge, global challenge that I mean, similarly to the pandemic, it's affecting all of us. And the conscious design community is well positioned to address and to contribute to solution-focused conversations about climate change. Buildings and their construction account for at least a third of global energy use, which is pretty remarkable when we think about it. And it would be fabulous to see us engage in dialogues that address climate change very deliberately and use the platform that we've developed and we're all a part of to discuss potential solutions and between cities and from people with a diverse skill set and backgrounds. We really do have the opportunity to then take that information once shared and bring it to our communities, bring it to Denver, bring it to Israel, wherever around the world, and make positive change. So that's something that I'm hoping that we will, as a community, come to address and help solve.
Yeah, of course. I mean, climate change is definitely the need of the hour. I mean, just the other day, it started snowing here, and it's not, October has not even ended, and I'm just 63 degrees north. It's not even that far up in the north, but yeah. But just I'm curious though, because we are a collection of neuroscientists, psychologists, designers, and decision makers, and the rest, right? For us, social sustainability has been more important than, I would say, ecological or environmental sustainability for some reason. I mean, that's at least the subliminal undertone. So I'm really curious to see how next year we will actually take the climate action head on, because no matter where we come from, climate is something that we have to deal with if we are, well, existing on this planet. So as you said, it is something that we have to actively address, maybe not as a community with a certain level of expertise, but maybe as a commitment to conscious design, as a way of solving certain problems. So that would be interesting. Yeah, and thank you so much for taking the time today and taking part in this little dialogue. And hopefully we'll be able to take these ideas forward next year.
Yeah, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Aishwarya. Thank you, Monica.